Well, that's a very interesting question and an interesting challenge. Without the leaders having a clear vision of where they want to go, sooner or later the rest of the organization will start fumbling. And so while there might be pockets of high performance because there are currently managers in those pockets who are high performance managers and have a lot of leadership ability, unfortunately they'll fizzle out over time when that person moves, if it's not supported at the leadership. And so probably a couple things have to occur. Either the marketplace or the constituency that the organization serves needs to give them some customer satisfaction feedback if they're not performing well, and they can respond to that, as well as those high-performing organizations inside the organization can take a leadership position and start influencing other parts of the organization so that they can slowly engage the leadership in accepting the challenge. But those would be two potential options to answer that question.
Un saludo muy cordial para nuestra audiencia en Colombia. La
This is Colombia, Medellín. Colombia is
Federación Nacional de Comerciantes.
bringing the following question. Good morning. Our question is the following. The basic unit of the organization is the person, the individual. So the quality of the organization depends on the quality of the individual. How can you develop in each one of us the full potential of leadership that we all have within?
Okay. During the second part of my talk, I talked about those organizations where, and we asked the question, what type of organization do you think you could be most successful in? And we saw the profile of that type of an organization. I think the fascinating part of that is that around the world, wherever the question has been asked, the results have always been the same, whether it's in Latin America or whether it's in Asia or Europe, etc. And so there is this desire in each of us to work in organizations where learning is supported, where we're supported for becoming a better person ourselves and consistently growing. And so, to answer the question, I think what we need to do is create the environments where people can actually start experiencing that. And where they start experiencing that, they'll continue to repeat the behaviors. And so I think that addresses what I heard or understood the question to be, so that we have the desire, we need to work in the environment where that can occur, and leaders have to make sure that they nourish and support that kind of behavior.
Volvemos a México, desde Tepic, Nayarit.
Go back to Mexico.
La formulan del Instituto Tecnológico
Tepic, Nayarit, and this is from the Technological Institute. Buenos días. Well, from Tepic, Albino Rodriguez would like to thank Dr. Hoffmann for his great ideas regarding attitudes and behaviors of individuals within organizations. There is a learning model by experience for organizations, and this is based on the immediate reality, observation, abstraction, and the commitment to action. And so the question is, how can we take advantage of the learning abilities that have been developed by some of the members of the organization in order to compensate and develop those who have not been incorporated by other individuals, so that the ones that other individuals don't have within themselves?
Well, we'll go back to looking at how people are aware of things and how they perceive things. And so I think we ultimately have to go back to the conversation with those individuals of having an understanding of how they're looking at the world and what data or what biased point of view they may have, and having a conversation around that. As expanding from that, then is how are we supporting as leaders, again, or what mechanisms do we have in place to support the people who in fact are exhibiting the behavior that you want, and is that leverageable to bring the others in and engage them as well? So from what point of view or what attitude is the leadership coming from? Are we coming from the point of view that there are some where it's working and we'll reward those, and there are some where it isn't working and we won't reward those? Or are we coming from a consistent attitude that we want everyone engaged, and then our behaviors and words consistently reflect that? Because our attitude will clearly drive the results.
Saludamos ahora a Tamaulipas,
And
México.
greetings to Tamaulipas, Mexico, the university in Tamaulipas. Good morning. We would like to ask the following question. How can we instill at the leadership levels this concept of the learning organization when we don't have when we only have lip service, but we don't have coherence and inconsistency, when people are more concerned with the image rather than with substance?
That question goes directly to the intention that we were just speaking of. If the intention is not there, people will notice it without our being aware of it. Because our behaviors, the words we choose to use, etc., will in fact not support that. Now, if the leadership recognizes the behavior in these other leaders that you speak of, what are the human performance mechanisms to address that? For example, I've been working with an organization where that is a precise issue. And it was very clearly addressed by the top leader to those leaders in conversation what the expectations were. And there was a time period given as to when the behavior ought to have been changed. In fact, it wasn't, and those people are no longer with the organization. So part of the leadership's responsibility is to send very strong messages which support the very clear intention of what you want to do. By removing that person from the organization, sent a very strong message to the organization that you were serious as leaders on what the intent is that was important and what you were going to support and how you're going to behave. Now that might seem a little extreme, but it's those types of messages that speak louder than any of the words you might have used around that particular incident. Excuse me. Sorry.
Vamos ahora a la capital mexicana.
Now we're going to Mexico, the DF, National Autonomous University, Medicine, Veterinarian College. Good morning, Mr. Hoffmann. My question is related to the first module, and this is, what would be the mental models that are not adequate and that are more frequent in the organizations who want to learn?
The mental model is probably one more around discovery, being open to possibilities, and also coming at things from the point of view that you can make a difference. If I start from that point of view, I'm going to be searching for things in a way that will keep my mind more open than if I'm coming from the point of view that it's not my problem, because then I'll find excuses for not getting involved. So if I come from the point of view or the attitude of ownership, I will be looking for possibilities, and that mental model will generate more data, more quality data, from which you can make effective decisions.
Bueno, y retornamos a Brasil.
Back to
La
Brazil.
siguiente pregunta
This
es
question is
formulada
coming
desde
from KTV Communications in Rio de Janeiro. Adelante. Welcome, Rio.
Yes,
Sí, por favor, siga.
Your question.
Chair Franken from Anderson Consulting in Rio de Janeiro. I would like to know if there is, in your point of view, a relationship between size and the capacity to become a learning organization? Is it some way desirable to break down big companies into smaller and relatively autonomous units to get higher speed in our learning process?
Thank you. I think as you look at any organization, there are many smaller organizations within each one because of discipline, specialties, functions, etc. And so as I think of the organization as a whole, particularly large ones, to your point, if the intention of the entire organization is to becoming a learning organization and the leadership at the top consistently provides that direction, excuse me. Sorry, I've got a cold. Is providing that direction. And then, to your point, you break the organization into smaller entities, and those organizations become more effective. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice now. Those organizations become more effective. I would agree that those smaller entities can accelerate learning and become learning entities, and then you can leverage that across the organization. So I'm highly supportive of both of those. I would be very clear, though, on the intention of the entire organization and the leadership sending that consistent message before it will be effective.
And now we're going back to the city of Tijuana. The following question is coming from the Tijuana University campus, Northwestern campus. The participation within the organization. Hello? The personal project and the interest in achievements and the pride in contribution. How can all of this be incorporated in a maquiladora model that does not really identify with its people and that comes from another culture and that is not consistent culturally? How can that be done?
I'm not sure that I fully understand the question. I'm sorry, I was clearing my throat here. As you but let me see if I got the context, and then I'll answer. If you're looking at an organization which is multicultural, meaning people from different nations, versus the culture of the organization, I think there's a richness that the multicultures bring to the organization, understanding, depth, heritage, etc. The way of understanding brings other points of view to the smaller organization or the organization in which you're working. That organization, though, in and of itself develops its own culture. The mechanisms which are rewarding and encouraging behaviors. It's those that we have to look at within the organization, no matter where the people come from, that have to be dealt with in understanding whether or not we can move from a comfort zone to a higher performance zone, or whether or not the organization is at a point in time where, in fact, it's acceptive of change. But in all of those, there has to be a clear intent of the leadership of the organization as what they're trying to accomplish, and again, a clear vision of where they're going. I hope that answered the question because I wasn't sure of the entire context.
Now we're going back to Patzingan, Michoacán, Mexico. This is the Technological Institute. We would like to send you our greeting. And the question is, could you tell us what the most important steps are in order to go from the comfort zone to the high zone, high performance zone, and what are the requirements, and how can we really see change?
Okay, for moving from the comfort zone to the higher performance zone really takes a look at the fear risk. So is the perception of risk on the part of the employees too great so that in fact they know that the behaviors won't be supported? So for example, I worked in an organization where every time someone brought information to the boss basically shot them. Well, clearly this shut down communication over time rather rapidly with anything else that was going on in the organization, and ultimately he did not have the right information that he needed to be making decisions, and ultimately the organization became very dysfunctional. He didn't recognize the ramifications of his own behavior. So part of what I'm suggesting is understanding the level of risk that the people perceive, and we may only find that out by asking, on one hand. On the other hand, it's demonstrated by what occurs every day. And so are we just aware of what is occurring? Have we thought about just observing and becoming more aware? Because until we're aware, we can't make a choice. Once we're aware of what we believe the risk is, then as leaders, how do you want to encourage people to take the risk, and how will you support them? Will you in fact say, rather just congratulations publicly or privately, or will you invest more money in the project that they're working on? Will you have some other kind of recognition for that particular effort, so that demonstrates to others that it's relatively safe for them to take the same kind of risks and start moving? Because then is when the ideas will come out. That's when people will start challenging and rallying around a point, and that's when people will become totally engaged in owning the problem and addressing it. And you want people to continue to push that. And again, there are points in times I think we have to be realistic, that we're not going to go beyond the high performance into the danger zone and put the company at risk. That just doesn't make sense. And I think you'll all recognize when that's occurring. So that's not the point. But the point is getting people to take the perceived risks and find out if they're actually real by becoming aware of the true implications of the behaviors that they've developed or the organization has developed around their perception.
Bueno, regresamos ahora a Lima, Perú.
Now we're going back to Lima, Peru.
De la Universidad
This
Nacional
is
de
the National University of Engineering.
Escuchamos.
Buenas tardes, Dr. Hoffmann.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hoffman.
Hay una pregunta.
This is a question that has two parts. First one is,
Para que una
in order for an organization to be a learning organization,
¿cuál es la intención esencial
what is the basic intention?
que el trabajador entienda
That the worker understand and identify himself with the company in order to optimize its results? Or is it that the intentions of the organizational culture of the company may enable the worker to fulfill himself as a person and unfold himself? Or in order to get the organization to be a learning organization, do you think that you have to manipulate the cultural work, the culture of the workplace, or do you think you need technology for this?
Okay. The first question, I think, comes down to something I said before, that the real core of becoming a learning organization is the commitment and the intention of the leadership to support everyone in personal growth. Through that that really is the foundation or the foundational value, in a sense, of the organization becoming a learning organization. With reference to manipulating the culture, I'm not sure it's manipulating the culture as much as understanding the impacts that the culture has and the behaviors that are being rewarded and exhibited, so that you change the reward structure to become one which is more supportive of the intention. And so you're aligning the mechanisms around the intention so that the behaviors migrate. I wouldn't call it manipulating the culture.
Gracias por las excelentes preguntas.
Thank you for your excellent questions, but we have run out of time. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. We hope that you have enjoyed participating in this video conference. We will continue transmitting programs on the latest in management techniques and systems and global competitiveness. We invite you to participate on November 21 in the next program of our Strategies for Global Competitiveness series, entitled Strategic Management of Environmental Resources, Today's True Executive Challenge. For more information on the ITC's program for this year in 1997, please consult your participants' manuals, where you will find the dates and specific topics of this year's programs. So if you're interested in attending or participating in training sessions which will be offered by the International Training Center, please feel free to contact the Center by letter, phone, or fax. On behalf of all of us who collaborate with the International Training Center, I thank you for your participation and interest in today's program. Thank you and see you soon.